Vancouver or Calgary, which one of these two incredible Canadian cities is best for you and your family to live in? The thing is, both of these cities are incredibly desirable. They're two of the fastest growing cities in Canada for a reason, but they're not absolutely perfect. They're not for everyone. And we're gonna get to the bottom of that by exploring all sorts of different topics, including the demographics, the climate, the job opportunities, and the cost of living. By the end of this video, you will know whether you should move to Calgary or Vancouver. Let's get into it right now. And I'm Sebastian Albrecht with the Living in Vancouver, BC team. Welcome back to the channel. We're gonna get right into it here, talking about geography. The city of Calgary is 820 square kilometers. It's vastly larger than the city of Vancouver, but it only has 1.3 million inhabitants. So it's something in the neighborhood of 1,600 people per kilometer. It's much more spread out. In the entire Calgary CMA, Metro Calgary area, there's 1.5 million people. So you don't have a lot of people in outer suburbs as you do with the city of Vancouver. It is one of the fastest growing cities in Canada. In a 5-year period between the two last censuses, between 2016 and 2021, it grew by 6.4%. One big difference between Calgary and Vancouver, one more big difference, I should say, between Calgary and Vancouver is that Calgary is also very isolated. There are no big cities that close. There are no places to go that are that close. You have to go a pretty large distance to find anywhere worth going outside of nature. So to get down, really Vancouver is the next very large city. Edmonton isn't that far away, but you're quite a distance from anywhere in any direction with any amount of population. For the city of Vancouver, as you probably know if you've been watching these videos, it's a very small city at just 110 square kilometers. We have about 700,000 people that live in the city of Vancouver, and Vancouver is, as a result, the densest populated city in Canada with nearly 6,000 people per kilometer. In all of Metro Vancouver, though, there are 2.9 million people that reside in Metro Vancouver, so it's roughly double the size of the Calgary area. And between 2016 and 2021, Vancouver grew by 7.3%, so just slightly ahead. I think in the last couple years, Calgary is definitely seeing more growth than the city of Vancouver. Again, going back to that accessibility, you find that in the city of Vancouver, there is more accessibility to other areas, places like the Okanagan, Victoria, Seattle, the Gulf Islands. You're gonna find that there's more places to go that are closer and more accessible when you're in Vancouver. All right, climate. It is one of the bigger differences that you're gonna find between Vancouver and Calgary. And the stereotype about Calgary would really be that it's cold, extreme temperatures. And to some degree, that's right. You do have very cold winters where it can get down to -20, -30, and a fair amount of snow. But the truth is, Calgary is actually one of the milder climates in the prairie. Because of the Rocky Mountains, you have Chinook winds that come down off the Rockies. And so very quickly, within the matter of hours, temperatures can rise 20 odd degrees and stay that way for a few days. So you can go from well below freezing to above freezing very, very quickly. And it sort of breaks up those winter months. The other significant thing to note about Calgary is that it's incredibly sunny. In fact, it's one of the sunniest places in Canada. So winters are cold, they're broken up by those Chinooks, but they can also be quite sunny. You're gonna get a lot of sunlight when you live in Calgary. And there's also a lot of wind. And coming off those Rocky Mountains, that's another thing that you're gonna need to get used to, that it can be incredibly windy in Calgary. Summers can be incredibly hot, well over 30 degrees. And so you're going from those extreme temperatures, very cold to very hot, but throughout the year, incredibly sunny. And what about Vancouver's climate? Well, we all know the stereotype that Vancouver's incredibly wet, that we get a lot of precipitation. In fact, one of its nicknames is Raincouver after all. But that's not really necessarily the truth. Most of the rain that we get is all in the winter months. Very little rain happens in the summer months. And then the other thing to know is that there's a lot of difference in the variation in the amount of precipitation different parts of the Lower Mainland get. To the north and east, typically there's more rain. To the south and west, a lot less rain. So you can find pockets that are relatively dry and pockets that are very, very wet. But the truth is that we see a lot of cloud cover in Vancouver. We don't see as much sun, especially in the winter months. And that would be one of the big differences between Vancouver and Calgary, that you are gonna see significantly more sun in Calgary than you will in Vancouver. But Vancouver is a much more temperate climate. The winters are much warmer. the summers are much cooler. And so it's a more agreeable climate for many people. That's what draws many people to Vancouver from different parts of the world, where they see perhaps a lot more rain, a lot more snow, a lot colder temperatures, or a lot hotter. People that want some sort of in between are typically drawn to Vancouver. So let's take a quick look at the demographics of Calgary and Vancouver. Both of these cities are very diverse, but Vancouver does lead as the second most popular destination for new immigrants in the entire country. As a result, you're going to find that Vancouver has a greater diversity of population. In Calgary, roughly 55% of the population identifies as European, 28% as Asian. And the population in Calgary definitely veers towards a younger demographic. Vancouver, on the other hand, we see 42% of the population identifying as European and a whopping 45% as Asian. And as I said, Vancouver definitely veers towards an older demographic. Not old by any means as we might find in a place like Victoria, but certainly older than Calgary. And so what about politics? Well, the stereotype of Alberta is that it's incredibly conservative, very right-wing. What a lot of people don't actually realize is that Calgary is the most liberal region of the entire province. And so it leans a little more to the left. It doesn't lean as far to the left as Vancouver does. And so if we look at Vancouver, the stereotype of Vancouver is that it's more of a liberal place. Similar to urban areas all over North America, it definitely leans much more to the left. But the truth is there's many conservative areas in the Lower Mainland. And if you go into the outer suburbs, particularly out into the Fraser Valley, further east, you're going to find that there's a lot of conservatism, a lot of right-wing politics that are much more aligned with what people might feel in Alberta. No matter the politics, if you're thinking of moving to Vancouver and buying a home, I can help you. I am a real estate agent that's helped hundreds of families move to Vancouver, and I can help you as well. My contact information is right there on the screen. Reach out anytime at your convenience and we can get that conversation started. And even if you're thinking of moving to Calgary, I can connect you with agents that I know, excellent people in Calgary to help you with your move, whether it's Vancouver or Calgary. Now let's get back to the video. And now we're going to take a look at the cost of living. The difference between Calgary and Vancouver is pretty stark in this regard. Calgary is at one end of the spectrum as one of the least expensive cities in all of Canada. And at the other end, we have Vancouver, which is one of the most expensive, if not the most expensive city in Canada. And this begins with taxes, something that we all have to pay, unfortunately. But in Alberta, one tax that you do not have to pay is a sales tax. There is 0% sales tax in Alberta, unlike BC, where we have a 7% tax. So right away, any purchase that you make, you are saving money if you're living in Alberta and specifically in Calgary. And in income taxes, you can also be saving money. Now, I think there's a bit of a misconception that all income taxes are lower in Alberta. That's actually not the case. The truth is, at the lower end of income, you're saving money in Alberta, and then at the high end of income, you're also saving money. And let's look at some examples. So if you're making at $50,000, you'd actually, let me get this right, saving about $700 annually if you're living in BC. At $100,000, you're saving about $900 if you're living in BC. At $150,000, this is where the tables turn and it starts to be cheaper to be living in Alberta, where you'd be saving about $550, almost $600 annually. And then at $250,000, you'd be saving almost $4,000 annually by living in Alberta and specifically in Calgary. And then the other thing to note when you're purchasing property is that there's actually no property transfer tax in Alberta. When you purchase a property in BC, every single purchase that you make, you have to pay this property transfer tax. And if you're buying a $500,000 property, that means that you're saving $8,000 on that purchase in Alberta. If it's $1 million, you're saving $18,000. And if it's $2.5 million, you're saving $53,000. So obviously the more that you're spending, the more money that you're going to be saving. Gasoline is also considerably cheaper in Alberta, where most of our gas is coming from in Canada and in Vancouver specifically, but you're saving about 25% in Calgary versus Vancouver. Right now, gas prices are about $1.30 in Calgary and they're about $1.80 in Vancouver. So big difference there. Property taxes, that's one zone where Vancouver has an advantage, just so you're aware. Property taxes in Calgary for the same price property are about triple. You're paying about 27 cents as a mill rate 0.27 as a mill rate, and 0.71 in Vancouver. Another area where you're actually saving money in Vancouver would be on utilities. And utilities, I found it hard to find exact numbers here, but pretty consistently, it looks like they're about double in Calgary. So that's going to be your gas, your electricity, your water, those types of utilities, saving money in Vancouver. But if we go back to areas where Calgary is more affordable, one area where you're going to be saving a lot of money, and the biggest issue is really on housing affordability. And Calgary is undeniably considerably cheaper than Vancouver. I'm going to go through some precise numbers here. Calgary, a one bedroom is $1,730 a month. You're looking at close to $3,000 a month in Vancouver. So nearly half as much money in Calgary, $2,181 a month for a two bedroom in Calgary. Again, almost double in Vancouver at about $4,000 a month. The thing in Calgary to be aware of, and on Alberta in general, is that there's a lot fewer protections for renters, and there is no rent control. That is something that we have in BC, despite these higher numbers, that there are far more protections for you as a potential tenant, and rents are controlled so long as you're not moving. In an environment where there's lots of people moving to Calgary, we are seeing those rents increase pretty rapidly. And now in terms of ownership, there is a big difference as well. The biggest difference is for detached homes. You're looking at about $700,000 in Calgary, and you're looking at about $2 million for the typical detached house in Vancouver. That is about triple the cost. That is driving a lot of people out of a city like Vancouver. If they want to own a house and they're unable to do so, they're finding that they're able to buy that house in Calgary much more easily. For townhouses, again, the typical townhouse in Calgary right now is about $425,000, and in Vancouver, it's about $1.1 million. So again, nearly triple, not quite. And for apartments, the difference is a little bit closer, but it's about $317,000 in Calgary and about $770,000 in Vancouver. So just over double for an apartment. So if you're looking to purchase either a townhouse or a house, they are considerably cheaper in Calgary than they are in Vancouver. Other expenses are basically the same. So whether that is the cost of groceries, they're slightly higher in Calgary, but not much more. Things like car insurance and other expenses, going out to eat, those are all very similar between Calgary and Vancouver. All right, so now let's talk about commuting and transportation. Calgary is a much more car-focused city than the city of Vancouver is, but they're also moving to alternative modes of transportation. So it has a very good light rail system called the C-Train. Currently there's 2 routes in Calgary. They're also at the moment building a 3rd route. I think it's called the Green Line, but there are car share, there is Uber and there is Lyft in Calgary. There's a really good cycling and walking network throughout the city. It has really an excellent public transportation system, but because of the structure of the city and because of the way that it's spread out, it does take time to get around the city, and that is helped by the highway infrastructure. There's an extensive highway network in the city and around the city that really helps people get around efficiently and fast. And because it's not incredibly densely populated, it does mean that traffic moves around the city quite efficiently. And so while you do need to rely on your car more often than you would in the city of Vancouver, those trips that you're taking are going to be more efficient. Conversely, in the city of Vancouver, we have a city that is very dense, very small, and we have many alternative modes of transportation to get throughout the city. And what that means is we don't have an excellent highway system that sort of integrates the entire city and its suburbs, but we do have a phenomenal alternative transit system, and public transit system in and of itself is one of the best in North America and something that a lot of people that live in Vancouver really take advantage of. It means the distances that you're traveling typically are much smaller just because things aren't as spread out, but it does take longer periods of time. So in comparison, if you're making trips via car, they're probably going to be shorter trips. You can probably use alternative modes of transport rather than using your car, and you can walk and cycle much more frequently. Walkable communities in Vancouver are far more common. But if you do have to commute, and especially from the outer suburbs, those commutes are going to take longer in Metro Vancouver than they will in Calgary most of the time. Hey, real quick, I need your help. I make videos like this every single week, and I put this stuff out into the internet, and I don't know if it's good or bad, and I want your feedback. So if you're getting value out of this video, hit that like button and smash the subscribe button if you want to see more videos just like this one, because I do make videos like this every single week about moving to and living in Vancouver. Now let's get back to the video. Now let's talk about job opportunities in the economy. A lot of people would be driven to Calgary because of those opportunities. In recent years, there has been, in the last couple of years, a boom in Calgary on a lot of fronts. But traditionally, Calgary and Alberta as a whole is a bit of a boom and bust type of economy. Has been very singularly focused on the oil industry. And that's sort of the reputation that Calgary has. In recent years, that's been diversifying significantly, but it's still very dependent on oil and gas. As a result of being reliant on something that pays so well, the typical median household income in Calgary is one of the highest in Canada at just over $97,000 annually. Some of the big employers in Calgary include Shaw Communications, Nova Chemicals, and TELUS. It has the second highest concentration of head offices outside of Toronto, which I find actually really, really interesting. And so there are a lot of really high-paying jobs in Calgary, and it is one of the biggest drivers for families and people moving to Calgary in the recent years. But there are periods where oil and gas suffers. As a result, the people in Calgary tend to suffer during those times economically, and the opportunities diminish considerably in those periods. Vancouver, on the other hand, has a much lower median income, and it's much more average for Canada at just shy of $83,000 annually. We are a much larger city with a much more diverse economy. Traditionally, it was much more focused on forestry and on mining, but in the last 20 years or so, it's diversified considerably, becoming a center for software development, biotechnology, aerospace, video games, animation studios, television production, and film production. And in fact, it's the third largest center for film production in all of North America, supporting over 20,000 jobs. It's also a really strong hub of lifestyle brands, being a place that is very health oriented. But we have companies like Lululemon, Arc'teryx, Kitten Ace, Mountain Equipment Co-op, Herschel, Aritzia, and Reigning Champ. And then tourism is one other massive industry in Vancouver. We get more than 10 million visitors annually, and it brings in over $4.8 billion annually and supports more than 70,000 jobs. And now in terms of nature, both cities are known for their access to nature. Calgary in particular is right at the doorstep of the Rocky Mountains. You're between 1 to 3 hours from some of the most incredible national parks in the entire country. There's Banff nearby, Yoho National Park, Kootenay, and Glacier National Park. They're all within easy reach for hiking and camping on the weekends. The city itself has limited access to water. You do have rivers that run through the city of Calgary. You have the Elbow and the Bow rivers. So there's no access to the ocean and not really a lake network nearby. But you do have those rivers that run right through the city of Calgary. And then you also have a phenomenal network. I think it's over 1,000 kilometers of paved trails that run through the city of Calgary for cycling and walking. So a lot of people these days are moving to Calgary because of that access to the outdoors and a healthier lifestyle. Now, in terms of Vancouver, I would say that its access to nature is a little above what you'd find in Calgary. You still have the access to the mountains. You don't have as much access to these incredible national parks, but we are surrounded to the north within a half-hour drive of the city of Vancouver by mountains like Grouse, Cypress, and Seymour. And then we're just about an hour and a half away from incredible skiing and outdoor access through summer months as well at Blackcomb and Whistler. On top of the mountains, we also have the ocean access and river access. So we have the Fraser River right beside Vancouver, and then the Pacific Ocean right at our doorstep with access to the islands and all of the sailing and swimming possibilities that all opens up. And then in terms of the parks within Vancouver, we have some of the best parks in North America, Stanley Park in particular, right on the edge of downtown Vancouver, but also some other large urban parks like Pacific Spirit Park and Queen Elizabeth Park, and then just the entire network of smaller city parks scattered throughout the city of Vancouver. And all of the suburbs also have phenomenal park and outdoor access as well. Some regional parks run by Metro Vancouver, as well as some of those suburbs like Burnaby and the city of Coquitlam are really known for their urban park infrastructure. So that is quite literally a highlight of living in Vancouver, that access to the outdoors. What about nightlife? What about entertainment? This isn't something that all of us are really all that concerned about, but if this is something that's critical for you, I think you're gonna find that Vancouver has an advantage here. A lot of it, neither city is really known for its nightlife. We pale in comparison, whether you're Calgary or Vancouver, to cities like Toronto, New York, or LA as an example. But those are all much larger cities. And Calgary, frankly, pales in comparison to Vancouver. There's just not as much going on in Calgary as there is in Vancouver, but that makes sense because it's half its size. So if there are big events or musical acts, as an example, that are coming to Canada, they very rarely will go to Calgary and not Vancouver. In fact, I can't think of a single example of that happening. I'm sure it has. But predominantly, if events and activities are coming to Canada, they will go to Vancouver and to Toronto. An example of this is the World Cup that is North America will be hosting. It is going to be co-hosted in Canada by Toronto and by Vancouver. Very consistently, that happens time and time again. Not only is it happening with events, but we also see that with the music scene or the food scene. There's just a lot more going on in Vancouver than there is in Calgary. Calgary is improving quite a bit. I mean, there's a lot more money in Calgary today than there ever has been before. So people are looking at ways to spend that money, and people are offering alternative ways to spend that money much more in Calgary than ever before. But there's still much more of that opportunity in Vancouver, and things tend to be happening later and going on a bit more in Vancouver than they do in Calgary. Calgary tends to shut down. Most of Calgary shuts down much earlier than the city of Vancouver. And so if you're looking for nightlife, if you're looking for entertainment options, you're gonna find those in Vancouver much more than you are in Calgary. So there we have Vancouver versus Calgary. I hope you got a really good understanding of what each city is like from this video and which one might be better suited to you. If you are thinking and leaning towards moving to Vancouver and purchasing a property in Vancouver, be sure to reach out anytime. My contact information is right here on the screen. I'm a real estate agent that's helped hundreds of people move to Vancouver over my 16-year career, and I can help you as well. All it takes is a conversation, and we can get that ball rolling at your convenience. But if you're thinking of moving to Calgary, I can help you with that as well by connecting you with excellent agents in the Calgary area. In the meantime, hit the like button if you got value out of this video, and smash the subscribe button if you want to see more videos just like this one about living in and moving to Vancouver. I put out videos like this every single week, and I hope to see you on my next video next week. Bye for now.